Hey folks, here I am in Cusco with some further updates for you. Today, Saturday, the 14th of January 2023, things in Cusco have been extraordinarily normal, like really quite normal. I went out with my friend who is due to leave soon and walked around and even did a little bit of light tourism type stuff with her, which was pretty nice. We had a nice breakfast out at a favorite breakfast spot and a lot of that kind of thing. So that was all fine and dandy. There was no protest action really anywhere in town. I do live a few blocks from one of the main staging areas, and it is still pretty full of people who have come in from the country who are camping out there. So that tends to lend credence to what many are saying, which is that strikes and protests and roadblocks and so forth will be starting up again come Monday. The airport in Cusco is operating and functional, and public transit is working, and all of that sort of thing. Pretty much everything has been open. Probably not a lot of stuff is going to be open tomorrow because Sunday there's a lot of stuff closed anyway, but usually most of the tourist type things are open. And I'll keep you posted on all of that. Everything was pretty empty though. There was not a lot in the way of crowds. So, that did make it a nice time to go out and walk around and do a little bit of touristing in Cusco. As far as the roadblocks all around, the word is that they've been pushed to the sides of the roads. They have not been removed and permanently cleared. Nothing that the Peruvian national government is saying is anything that seems like sufficient concessions to the people who are protesting. Just as a reminder, what they're protesting for at this point is the close of Congress and new elections for new Congress, for the president to resign in the wake of almost 50 dead protesters in the past month or so, just about a little over a month, and for new elections ASAP, not in April of 2024, but sooner than that, sometime this year, 2023, and for a constitutional assembly to review many of the things in the Constitution that have been deemed to be causes long-term of major corruption in government. So, contrary to what is being reported in some English language news media, nobody is talking about ousted President Pedro Castillo, and nobody has been talking about him really in any kind of way for quite some time. I have seen some English language publications that are saying, oh, it's all just these Castillo supporters and they're hopeless leftist radicals and they just want their guy back. That's not why people are protesting. And you can tell that's not why people are protesting if you look at the signs that they're carrying and read what they say, which I realize if you don't read Spanish may be challenging to do, but all the same, you could look at them, look at the picture and put in what it says on the sign into Google Translate, and you will find out it does not say anything about restoring ousted President Pedro Castillo to power. That is not an agenda issue. That is not a thing that people are protesting for. So I also want to say some people have compared this to what they're hearing in the news is happening in Brazil. Also not the same thing. So who's protesting now are not, as I say, people who want to see a former president restored to power. These are people who are protesting against large-scale killings of protesters and who are protesting, calling for new elections and the closure of Congress, who does not have a high approval rate. I don't think it reaches the double digits. It might be 8% or 9%, and that's where it was at when this whole thing started in December with the ousting of Pedro Castillo, Peru's former president. Some other people have been asking, well, wait a minute, if the current president, Dina Boluarte, was the vice president under Pedro Castillo, isn't she just a leftist who is continuing his policies? No. She is not continuing his policies. And what decisions she is making are not particularly aimed at de-escalating the tensions or the situation. She repeatedly has said that she is not going to step down. I think that is a foregone conclusion. She is not going to step down. She says that she has already called for new elections as soon as she deems viable, which is one of the ranges that would be viable for new presidential elections under normal terms. Normal circumstances, as much as there are normal circumstances for someone to be calling for new presidential elections. And so that would be April of 2024. And again, as I say, for a lot of people who are protesting, that doesn't feel soon enough. There's a lot of other fairly complicated stuff that goes on with all of this, and it's hard to explain in a way that makes sense to folks who maybe aren't long and strong in Peruvian history or politics. But I'm trying to be concise here and fairly short and to the point. So yeah, again, the major things people are protesting for: number one, close Congress; number two, Dina Boluarte to step down because they feel that it is her regime that has killed almost 50 people and wounded hundreds in the course of protests. Number three, new elections immediately, like sooner than 16 months from now. Number four, a constitutional assembly to address all of the things in the Constitution that people feel have led to extensive corruption and political instability. So no, this is not a case where a limited minority of people who back an ousted president want to see him return to power. This is a large segment of the Peruvian population who feels underrepresented and unheard, and who is very concerned about the future of the country. And they're not exactly happy about being out and protesting, and nobody really wants to be doing it, but those people feel strongly that they need to, and that it is important. So I think it's important to look at the context of what people's motivations are. At the same time, on the other side of the fence, there are people who strongly feel that further use of force is called for to suppress protests and prevent people from protesting, which is their legal right. And then there are people who are sort of more in the middle who are saying, okay, well, I'm fine with peaceful protests, but like, what about the looting and that kind of thing that's been going on? And again, that appears to be a small number of infiltrators. As to the dead and who has been shooting the dead, because the vast majority are dead of bullet wounds, initial investigations are turning up evidence that suggests many of the rounds which have been removed from people who have died are not consistent with the rounds that are normally used by Peruvian police and military. So that also puts some doubt into the mix about who is doing all the shooting and who is doing all of the escalation when police and protesters come together, because it is actually very common for police and protesters here to work together, and for police, in fact, to be protecting protesters even from people who might be bystanders who don't agree with whatever is being protested about. There's lots of protests that happens in Peru all the time. Like, there's always a protest happening. I mean, these are different and much larger in scope, and they really took a turn for being much scarier over the course of the past week, with, again, one day where 19 people were killed. That's a lot in one town within a few hours. It's a lot anywhere. But for 19 people to be killed during protests in one town within a matter of hours is essentially unheard of. It's pretty extreme. So that's the kind of stuff that is leading people to protest right now. It is not, like I say, that people want the ousted president returned to power. They want new elections, and they want constitutional change, and they want the regime that is currently in power to step down. And it is not only protesters who are calling for it, it is also large unions, it is human rights commissions, it is boards of directors of major universities, it is artists and musicians unions, it is a whole lot of organizations who are calling for those sorts of steps to be taken in the search for a political solution to the current crisis. And I think pretty much everybody would prefer for there to be a political solution to the current crisis, as opposed to something that requires further protest, let alone further violence and deaths and loss of life. So anyway, so that's where that is. Meanwhile, we have a whole lot of people who are saying, okay, but should I come to Peru right now? And my answer is going to be, like, today? Do you want to come to Peru today? Do you want to come to Peru tomorrow? Okay, like, maybe if you want to go to Lima, fine. But if you want to come to Cusco right now, my suggestion would be wait for a little bit. Now, how long? I don't know, a few days to a week to see where this goes, starting in a few days to a week, to see how long does it look like major protests can hold out, and how many people does it look like the current regime or whoever it is that is killing protesters can actually continue to shoot at and tear gas and stuff like that. So, like, maybe give it a week and check back in. If you would have asked me, today is Saturday, and if you would have asked me on Monday morning if I thought that day we were going to see 19 people killed in a matter of hours, I would have been like, no, everything is starting to really chill out. People are starting to really doubt that there's any point in doing these protests here in the provinces, because nobody in Lima really is affected by it or cares what happens in provinces, and that's the prevailing sentiment. So people are interested in not doing it anymore. But then 19 people were killed in a matter of a few hours, and that really changed people's opinions, right? So that really caused protests to intensify. That being said, everybody still has to survive. Everybody still has to live. So what has kind of started to be the case was the case in December, and it is the case right now, today, Saturday, the 14th of January. What's kind of been the case is that people will give a pause in the protests, a truce, for a few days to let people get from place to place, or try to transact some business, or do whatever it is that needs doing, right? Stock up on foods and make sure that deliveries get through and that kind of stuff. I wouldn't count on that being something that lasts longer than tomorrow. Like, for real. I wouldn't count on Monday being particularly chill, and it is worrying right now. Now, do I think that in February, March, April, May, we're still going to be in the middle of all of this? It's going to have to break at some point. Exactly how it breaks is anybody's guess. But like I say, my sense is that nobody wants anything other than a political, negotiated, peaceable solution to the things that are in play and at issue right now. So I think that is what everybody wants before anything else, with the exception of a very small minority of people who want chaos, but those are not who's protesting. So when people say, well, all these agents of chaos need to just stop, they're talking about, like, for instance, yesterday, looking out my front window at a major protest route, I saw thousands of people go by protesting peaceably, and I saw 7 people go by stealing traffic cones, kicking cans, and picking up small rocks and tossing them around. Okay, so thousands of people, 7 hoodlums, right? And that is really what we are seeing here. Now, 7 hoodlums is enough to destabilize a situation if protesters and police can't keep their cool and keep it together. But for the most part, what we are seeing is both protesters and police really keeping their shit together. So that allows for people's voices to be heard and the seriousness of things to be established, and that is the objective of blocking roads as well, is it needs to affect people. It needs to affect people if it's going to be an effective protest. And I would rather see it be roadblocks and challenges in transportation than anything else. We have not really been seeing the kind of property damage and whatnot that some other places have seen, even though we have seen some looting. Anyway, yeah, so it's a disturbing and worrisome situation right now, and I think one of the things that I really hope folks who are looking at coming to Peru right now, especially to the Cusco area right now, can understand is that for those of us who live here, we can't tell you what is going to happen tomorrow. I can't tell you what's going to happen half an hour from now with any degree of reliability. I can't tell you if the plumber who has been slated to come over this weekend and look at a problem with my hot water heater is going to make it. I can't tell you if my college student nephew is going to have in-person classes anytime soon. I can't tell you if I can go to the market across the street and buy fresh fruit tomorrow. I can't tell you if anything, right? So as far as are you going to be able to buy tickets to major tourist attractions 3 weeks from now? Dude, I don't know, and neither do the people who run those tourist attractions. Now, I am banking on, literally, the fact that I believe this won't last all that long, that this isn't going to last months and months and months, that this isn't going to turn into a full-blown civil war or anything like that. But if anybody tells you that they know exactly what is going to happen right now, I would be skeptical, because I don't think anybody knows exactly what is going to happen right now. And so the thing to be is flexible and prepared for anything that you can imagine. So if that's your idea of a good time when you're traveling, then cool. Come on over. Come for a visit. If, on the other hand, you want things to happen on a schedule and with relative comfort and ease and predictability, no, now is not your time. Now is not your time. And so that's it. And one of the things that comes up is people will say, well, so can I get to Machu Picchu? And someone will say, no, the trains aren't running. Supposedly the trains start running again tomorrow, but we haven't seen them start running again yet. So we don't know. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But anyway, so someone says, no, you can't get to Machu Picchu right now because the trains aren't running. And then someone says, well, what about this other archaeological site that is in Cusco? No, you can't get there either because there's no transit running in Cusco. Well, today there is. But then somebody will say, well, what about on the 27th of January, if I want to go to this other archaeological site that is 4 hours outside of Cusco, can I go there? We don't know. We do not know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're going to be going past burning tire fire roadblocks of people who are not interested in you going through there. So, we don't know. So the question of should you come or should you not right now is largely down to what your tolerances are for possible chaos, right? And how level-headed you are, because what's happening here is serious shit. This is not like a game. Nobody's playing around, and this is nobody's idea of a good time. So coming here looking for a good time right now might be a long shot. In a couple weeks, could be all over. Heck, I could wake up tomorrow and there could be no more protesters camped out in the park 2 blocks away from my apartment. Everybody could be totally back to normal, and everybody could just be saying, well, aren't we glad that month-long national nightmare is over? It could happen. We don't know. So the best bet is to think about what your tolerance is for chaos and disruption, how willing you are to be walking down the street and see a protest go by and potentially police come up and tear gas the entire protest, right? Like, does that sound like a good time? I mean, there's just this much unpredictability right now. Now, as I say, I don't think that it can last months and months and months. But anybody who's telling you that they have a set date for when it's over and that everything is going to be fine in a matter of days, I would be skeptical, like I say. Anyway, so I would take a wait-and-see approach on pretty much anything. If you're planning on coming in this coming week, yeah, it could go great. Everything could be fine. Here's hoping. We all hope so. but we don't know. So that's where it's at.